Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first panel on the first day of the Inven Global Esports Conference. My name is Tom Mathiessen, and I'm one of the reporters working for Inven Global. And today I'm going to be hosting the very first panel, joined by these four wonderful people. But before we get to that, I have to thank our sponsor, WeMade. Without them, this wouldn't have been possible. We wouldn't have been able to record as many sessions as we are, and wouldn't have been able to invite as many guests as we are. So, without further ado, we're going to get to our first panel, which is called Lessons in Esports Leadership, looking at the past and future of competitive gaming. We'll be looking at how fans have interacted with esports organizations over the years, and also what decisions esports organizations have made and might make in the future in order to continue to thrive. And in order for me to talk about this, I'm joined by Carlos Rodríguez, CEO and founder of G2 Esports,
Wait,
Steve
you guys are
Arhancet.
getting paid, by the way? That's a question. You
Sorry?
guys are getting paid? Because
Yeah,
of
yeah.
what you said.
They
I'm not
they
getting paid.
are.
I'm doing
They
this.
are.
I'm doing
They
this because
are.
I love it,
No,
okay?
yeah, they are. We recruited you for free. Yeah, you
Okay.
just yeah, because you like the camera so much. But we'll then Steve Arhancet, co-CEO and owner of Team Liquid, Joe Marsh, CEO of T1, and Tricia Sugita, also known as Mikumi X Bear. If people go back to the StarCraft days, CEO of FlyQuest. How's everybody doing today?
Very good.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you
Great.
so much for having us, and
You
thank
guys,
you for
thank
giving
you.
us Carlos to share.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. He was happy to donate. He told me so. Yeah, as I said, we're going to be talking about the past and future of esports and how that's shifted. And as executives, obviously, you've witnessed these shifts from very close by. And yeah, kind of my first question is, you as people are also very close with the fans, and how have you seen these interactions with fans change over the years? Some of you have been pro players at the start of your career, now transitioning into CEO. So, Tricia, let's start with you. How have you seen the interactions with fans shift as esports grew?
So I would say that fans are always as passionate. Esports exists because of the community that we built. All of us contributed, and the fans have been super supportive. We wouldn't be anywhere with the fans, and that's been consistent since day one, and that will always stay true. The things that have changed is esports has blown up. Back in the day, I was hosting esports events that were the biggest prize pool in the world, and that was $50,000. And now we have prize pools that are in the millions. So it has grown very much, but the one thing that's been consistent that's really special to me is the fandom, and all the people working behind the scenes have been just as excited and created more opportunities and windows for other people to also participate in esports. So that's been very exciting for me.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Steve, you've also been someone who's been around from very early on. Trisha's kind of saying that passion has kind of stayed the same. Is that something you notice as well?
Yeah, I'm absolutely. So I guess I've been professionally in esports for probably a decade now. And I'd say the level of energy that I experienced when I was at Texas at the LCS playoffs, and how much admiration and energy and nervousness and excitement that is exhibited by fans when they see the team, they see me. It's infectious, and it's why we do what we do. And that energy was the very same for the event that I went to at MLG in Raleigh in my first year. So that is very much the same. What I think has changed quite a bit is the way that teams interact with fans. And for the long time, it was just a one directional relationship. There was actually no conversation happening between fans and organizations. There was just an assumption from teams that, like, hey, we just pin board content and fans just enjoy it, and see it tomorrow. I think organizations are becoming much more involved in the relationships that they have with fans. You've seen that a little bit with what Carlos has done in NFTs and some of the IP that they've created to leave like a lasting impression with a fan. I saw that when I was in Texas with FlyQuest and the booth that they had, which was really interactive and super cool and very on brand, that left like a feeling or kind of a taste of what it meant to be a FlyQuest fan. And we've done the same with our Liquid Plus platform on, basically listens to all of the behaviors that are exhibited by fans on digital platforms and rewards them for points. that they can spend to redeem for like a shout out from Bjergsen. So that fan experience is being revolutionized. And the teams that get it and figure it out are going to build bigger fan bases. So I think that's what's changed the most.
Right. Yeah.
I'm glad out of the
Okay.
I'm glad out of the dozens of multi-million-dollar projects we're doing, you chose to speak about G2's NFTs. I appreciate that very much. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't on purpose. Just thank you. That's all. All. Thank you. Let's continue.
Don't worry, we might discuss like new ways for orgs to grow at the end as well a bit. But I don't want to keep name calling like some teacher. Okay, now you speak. So if you guys could sometimes jump in and respond to each other, that would be great as well. Joe, I saw you nodding as well during what Steve was saying. What do you agree with what he said, or what's your vision?
No, I think, from when I jumped in at T1, where SKT T1 was very regionalized and it was kind of Korea centric. You're seeing kind of the globalization of a lot of the teams, because everyone's competing in different games, different leagues, and I think you're seeing fan bases expand beyond the borders of their home region. And I think it's been great to kind of watch that interaction when you go to these live events or these international events. Because of the technology, we're kind of a digital asset. Everyone's able to interact, at all the different time zones, all the different platforms. We launched our T1.fan platform, so we can kind of curate unique experiences for our fans and kind of communicate to them, because you want to be able to stay in touch with them and not have to go through third-party platforms every single time to have those unique interactions. So I think the world has definitely shrunk for gaming fans, where you can reach your favorite team, favorite CEO, favorite player, and it's been fun to see that happen so quickly over the past few years.
Yeah. Well, you touched on something that I actually wanted to go into next, is that globalization and integrating the fans more. Because when I think back of my early days in esports, as well, Steve also said in the beginning, that it maybe felt a bit distant, but now it's closer. But in what way do esports fans in this day and age contribute to your organization? Because I think historically, fans bring in not much direct revenue if we look at like merch sales or other ways that they can financially contribute. So what does a modern day esports fan contribute? Carlos, maybe you can kick off on this one.
What do you mean exactly with modern day esports fan? Contribute to what? Sorry.
To your esport. What is an esports fan to G2 esports? What does it mean for G2 to like have a fan? Like to have an actual fan.
Yeah. So I guess for each organization, the answer is different. Some organizations value width of fandom, so it's the amount of fans. Some organizations value depth of fandom, so the engagement with them, and some organizations value a mixture of both. And I think you can find examples of all the three pretty much everywhere. So for G2 in particular, ultimately this boils down to your DNA and what you ultimately built this company for. For me, I always wanted to give people goosebumps or make them laugh or straight up entertain them through hopefully winning, but also losing, right? And my job is done if they are entertained. That's the way I see my job, right? Other organizations see their job differently. Other organizations, I don't know, I'd say TSM, for example, tries to be of help for casual players, to get in touch with different games, and there's the Blitz app, and there's a couple things they do that accomplish this. Some other organizations want to token gate or put specific content behind paywall so that the verticality is with the fans, and the way they monetize the fans is increased. I mean, it depends, right? So there's no wrong answer. There's no right answer. And for us, it's just mass entertainment what matters the most. And if we make them happy, if we entertain them in whatever the way we're driving to entertain them, then we succeeded.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Carlos said, especially in the beginning about each organization is on a different vision or mission on what they are trying to create. And I think some of the organizations in esports or esports teams are looking to amass fans and then sell them shit and monetize against it. And that is not big enough in terms of what you're trying to achieve as a company. And I think some of the organizations like Carlos just mentioned, when you have a vision that is unique and different and hopes to change the world in some sort of way. So for example, in Team Liquid, there's a lot of organizations out there that are very bro-y, misogynistic, about the superficial validation. They're chasing clicks and views, and it's about being bro-y, and that's the antithesis of Team Liquid. We're peculiarly passionate. We're about mastery. We're about pursuing excellence. We're kind of different and unique and quirky and different and about Muse, and it's just a different vibe. So our goal is to be a beacon for these people to say, like, yeah, gaming doesn't have to be toxic and say like all the disgusting things that you hear people say out there that other teams are like rallying around. Like, no, there's another organization that exists where the things that you value can mirror an organization, and if we can build a community that is inspired around those values, that changes the industry. That means that the way I grew up as a gamer, I don't have to just see phase content and some of these other teams, that like I can actually associate the values that I have with an organization that has those same values, and that we can actually change the gaming ecosystem for the better. That's a mission. That's why fans exist. And I think it's short-sighted to think of it as selling widgets or sponsors.
Yeah, I think Steve's right. A lot, the fans are smart. They don't want T1 to be a carbon copy of G2 or Liquid or FlyQuest. You have to kind of have your own identity and what works. So us being predominantly a Korean org, there's things that I can't do to the community or the way I communicate that Carlos can get away with, and it works well with his fan base. I have a unique set of challenges when I'm trying to expand globally, but also make sure that I'm catering to my hardcore fans in Asia. So you really have to kind of have the ability to communicate with your fans, let them be part of the process. In Korea, how you communicate, and in our case, over communicate, because our fan base expects kind of over communication in terms of how things are going. And there's always going to be things that we can't tell you. Like I can't tell you how contract renewals are going with XYZ player or who we're looking to sign, but we try to walk up to that line, let them feel part of the process, so that way they want to keep coming back and supporting the organization. Because to Steve's point, there's 1,000 options of teams, and the teams that are doing things well, or the teams that are doing things outside of just having game teams, are going to be the teams that survive after the great kind of collapse of all these teams and the kind of the consolidation process. It's probably going to happen over the next few years because money's drying up, the recession's probably coming. Like there's not going to be a lot of these capital market monies throwing money around like it's 2017, 2018 again. So you have to build that fan base to kind of sustain as things get rocky here in the next few years.
For us at esports, and when we look at esports teams, I think everybody made great points. What Carlos said and what Steve agreed with is everybody is unique, and it should be that way because we're all building brand equity very differently. If we were all the same thing and approach it the same way, then we would be like esports teams back in the day when I was in esports. I've been in esports for over a decade now, and outside of just the passion that I said that was consistent, we've seen the scope of everything has grown immensely. And part of that, to add to what Steve said, which actually really hits home for me, is, fans, they're the heart of our industry and they're their biggest motivators. It's their support that makes us happy to do what we do and gets us through the hard times and the roadblocks that we have. And we want to make sure that they are successful with us. So, excuse me, I'm a little bit sick. So with FlyQuest in particular, what we want to do is have them included in everything we do. We want to build a community with them. And the way that we've done that is be transparent with them and make sure that this is an inclusive, safe space. So I think that's a big change in how we've seen a shift from esports 10 years ago till now, especially me as being a woman. I sometimes still get that, I guess, toxicity when I play games or Valorant, whatever. But me coming from that scene, like I can just say like whatever, you know what I mean, like whatever, because I've dealt with this. But I have nieces and nephews, for example, and my nieces are too afraid to speak on voice comms in Overwatch and Valorant, and I think that has changed where organizations especially esports teams, are contributing positively. We're trying to be an example of that and share what it means to be vulnerable, what it means to have a safe space, and trying to be accountable for not just our actions, but influence our players to be better, influence and our community and push that, and be a brand that stands for those things. So, for example, we're an esports organizations, and what we do is we play in LCS. But what our vision is we want to showcase greatness. And that means that, greatness exists within everyone, and we want to help them find and showcase it. And that's very odd for an esports team back then. Like, if you try to come out with that, they're like, what are you doing? Let's just focus on the game. And now organizations have evolved where we're adding so much value, not just in the space, but the community that we want to build in. We want to be more than just an esports organization on our competitive side. We want to offer more. We want to be a brand that stands for these things and does things like for the environment or mental health issues, and be in the forefront of that.
Right. Well, you touched on the toxicity that sometimes kind of sneaks into it, and that's something I definitely want to discuss. Now, you probably aren't gonna call fans entitled, but I will do it for you, because as a journalist, I feel that fans as organization has grown closer, as you all also agreed on, that they've grown close to the fans. That fans sometimes feel that they can demand something from an organization. And sometimes this leads into like harassment of players, other individuals in the scene, which can be very tough to deal with. And obviously, as you all said, right, fans are at the core of an organization. If you want to step forward, you also have to carefully, kind of check how that fan base is growing and how they are operating. So with this development, or if you don't agree, feel free to share other observations, right? That fans are getting more involved and in a way, as I will describe it, maybe a bit more entitled to expecting explanations, something Joe touched on, maybe from organizations, or demanding changes. How do you manage that in this day and age? Like Carlos, you sometimes call your fans literally gargoyles on Twitter when they're acting up. So
I mean, So there's 2 points to this, right? That I see. Point number 1 is that you can't have it both ways. You can't have a fan spend. We have one of our fans specifically that I always see on Twitter. I love him. He's actually hilarious and not toxic at all, but maybe not the best example for that reason. But people like him, spending $5,000 to $10,000 a year in consumer products, physical consumer products in G2. For someone to feel that emotionally connected to something and not feel it deep in his or her bones when that something fails is very unlikely. So you can't have it both ways. You can't have fans that are truly invested and at the same time not care enough to sometimes lose their cool. Right. So I think
the majority of your fans are not going to spend €10,000 per year. The majority of your fans are going to like and retweet your tweets, basically.
I think the loudest voices are still the extremes. I don't think that all the fans or the majority of the fans are like this. I think that those that are like this tend to be the most extremist fans, which tend to be the hardcore fans at times, not always, but at times. And what I have found is that you have to know where to draw your line. You have to know, and which leads me to point number 2. Point number 1 is you can have it both ways. Point number 2 is you also have to educate them. And in my case, I'm pretty straightforward and cut through with the way I educate our fans. I don't want the gargoyles. They can just go somewhere else. I just don't want them. It's not worth it. I mean, it's just not worth it. So if there's a gargoyle, if you consider yourself a gargoyle, then whatever that means, I don't even know what that means, by the way, but the word gargoyle itself just sounds good enough for you to connect the dots. Then that's very like G2 is very like not gonna be your team, because I'm gonna laugh at you. We're gonna laugh at you openly at how ridiculous you're looking, And so it's almost like also the content you generate, the things you stand for, ultimately do generate, and the cultural background of your organization also do determine on average, the people that root for you. In the case of T1, of course, South Korean fans tend to be significantly more serious with competitive matters and require more communication. And maybe FlyQuest fans, need to see FlyQuest standing up for what's right in the world. And if you don't do that, if you don't match that expectation, then they get angry, right? If G2 doesn't proactively save the trees, nobody's gonna bat an eye, because that's not what we made them sign up for. We made them sign up for entertainment. So I think it's both points equally. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. That's all about setting expectations and who you are and owning it, right? So all our brands here are very different, and all of our brands are very successful because we know who we are, we know what our vision is, and it takes a lot of care and hard work to be consistent. As Carlos said, we can't say that we're about showcasing greatness and we're for the environment and planting trees and about mental health, and then suddenly we're like, F all of our players, we treat them like crap, and all this comes out, right? That would be a huge blunder for any esports organization, but I think especially for us, because we set that expectation of we're the good guys, we're wholesome. So if anything's not to expectation, you'll have consequences. And sometimes it could be positive. It doesn't always have to be negative. You can push the boundary. Like, it doesn't mean that our brand means like we're nice and we're quiet. Like, we want to have our own swag in our way, but it's within our style and the brand ethos that we set.
Yeah,
I think
Joe.
No, I was gonna say, like, to Carlos's point about the line, right? I think if I make decisions based on what the fans want, I'll be sitting with the fans next year, right? I think I remember this fall, where I got flamed for making no League of Legends roster moves, and people said I was an idiot and I should sign XYZ top laner. And I said, trust us, we know what we're doing. And everyone says, you don't know what you're doing, we should fire you. And now you look at where we're sitting, right? So trust that the people in the organization are trying to make good decisions based on the information that they have available that the public doesn't have available to them. To an earlier point, the toxicity in gaming, I think it's part the team's responsibilities, part the players, streamers, etc. But it's also on the game publishers. We can only do so much. When I play Valorant with my daughter, she doesn't go on voice comms and she only types in chat. Because as soon as you hear a female voice, the toxic comments come out. And she's a good player for her age, right? But I want her to enjoy gaming and have a positive experience. And you can't always have that the way kind of the current set of gamers react. So we tell our guys, see something, say something. Like, don't let something slide because you're on stream. Like, you got to really kind of address it in the moment. And also, when it comes to, if there's a moment where T1 signs a female pro or has an openly gay player, openly gay streamer, like, you can't let things slide on that sense, or change your morals and not support your players, and no matter what the circumstance. And to Carlos's gargoyle analogy, like, if you're going to be a gargoyle, like, no one on this panel would want that, right? So you gotta again draw the line in the sand of what you believe in, stand firm in it, and then kind of don't waver on the convictions, whether it's for money or for additional fans.
Yeah, Steve, you already said, Team Liquid wants to have this fan base that educates people and helps them grow as well. But obviously, there's also very passionate Team Liquid fans that, for example, some people might have been very excited to see Bjergsen being hired, and other people might not have been very pleased that Jensen wasn't given an opportunity to start this year for Team Liquid. So. How do you see that fan entitlement saying, like, hey, we demand an explanation for perhaps why Jensen wasn't started, and how that has shifted maybe over the years and into what it is now?
Yeah. Our perspective is that we try to provide as much information that we can. Now, there are contractual obligations, there's HR, there's liability, there's, confidentiality. There's just a lot of things that I think fans don't understand about the contracts and expectations that we set with our players when they come on board with the organization. And we'll always protect those. We'll always honor those obligations and commitments. So there is a line where we will not cross. But before that line, there are times where we try to share as much as possible. I think some things that come to mind when all of the Jat and Alphari stuff was going down, right? That was some pretty sensitive stuff. And what did we do? I sat down with Alphari, I sat down with Jat, and I said, we're just going to be open and honest and transparent. Are you cool with everybody talking the truth? Are you 100%? You're 100%? We're going to go on a live stream and we're going to talk about it. Not a VOD, a live stream. And we're just going to have an open panel of conversation directly with fans. Like, that's hiding nothing, right? That is full transparency, and I think that that's good. And I think it's important to communicate with fans, especially to Carlos's point, when they're extremely passionate about what we do. The only other point I'll say is that we've seen a lot of like self-moderation with our own community of fans. Like you go to our TL subreddit and somebody says something that may be a gargoyle comment, you'll see the rest of the community kind of like devour that, and just like take care of it before we even interact with it. And so that's the kind of power of a community. Once the community has shared values and beliefs and they have common behaviors that they share, they have this like-mindedness that, yes, folks that share these things are part of our community, and they self-moderate that community in a number of ways.
The compliment
Right.
you, Steve, I think that's because the community and culture that you guys built. That's because that's the expectation and that's what a TL fan means. I don't think that would be consistent with every esports organization. Some might be the exact opposite in the extreme way of what you do is you just complain and you crap on your team when they're failing, and you also crap on other teams, right? So that's some teams' brands. So that's a testament to, I think, the success you've built.
Yeah, well, to move on kind of to the next topic, but still keep that fan engagement there. Obviously, as an esports organization, you are mostly aimed at keeping your head afloat and staying in this industry. So we also see each esports organization enter partnerships, like FlyQuest with their Mastercard. G2, I think, has like 15 or something, can't list them all, but let's say BMW, and then because United Rivalry and Joe is here too. Team Liquid, we've seen like merch collaborations with Marvel, which stood out to me as something that really broadened the scope of what esports sponsorship and partnerships and integrating the fans can do. But we also do sometimes see backlash from fans for decisions that are made. If I look at other organizations, when the LEC announced their Neon partnership, funded by Saudi Arabian Prince, that got a lot of backlash, eventually was cancelled. And that is also something that we see in esports, where fans speak out against, they'll take a stance against an organization or some sponsorship deal that you are making. So how do you walk that fine line of saying, okay, we are going to go through with this, or we are not going to go through with this? Because sometimes you have to walk back a decision you made, but then have to, well, you will walk back maybe because the fans say, we don't like this. I don't know who wants to take the lead on this
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
I'll start. I think the organizations that are on this call have probably done an excellent job of not just chasing dollars, and have been extremely thoughtful about the partners and what they represent, and even their values as an organization, and what strategic value that they bring outside of just dollars. And that's been in part the selection process, right, with partners. That the number of times as TL as an organization has received inquiries on companies that want to partner with us that we're like, no way, like we're like that is not happening, and it's so quick for us. But I don't think it works that way for a lot of other esports organizations. The industry is very top heavy, right? You've got like the top 10-15% of esports organizations across the globe that garner like 80% of the value from most places. And so it's a struggle to be in the bottom. And so when a deal comes up, and it may be with a company that doesn't represent the right values, or is doing the wrong thing, or endorsing the wrong people, or saying horrible things, they may decide to put their values on hold and accept dollars. And that's just, from our perspective, wrong. But I understand why they do it, because they aren't in the same kind of position as the teams on this call. And I'm not giving them an excuse. I'm just saying the
You're just
rationalization
explaining.
associated.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rationalization associated with their decision making on why you see it happen sometimes. And so for us, we stick to our values. We do what's right, even when it's really hard. And if you consistently do that, then you send a message over time, and you build a community that respect those decisions. And and so And when we look at partners, we look for things outside of cash. We look for distribution. We look for brand, mark association, Marvel, like Team Liquid, Marvel, like you said, like damn cool, that's awesome. So like the starting point for some of these things, and then you kind of dream about what you can create with them. Like, what would it be cool if we did X, Y, and Z together? Like, and it's always about dreaming and then thinking bigger. And then when you think you've thought big enough, you think bigger than that. And if you continue to do that with your partners, you actually unlock bigger budgets and you do more, not just in North America, but globally. And so you see these partnerships develop over time, at least for us, where we're like a decade with this company and 7 years with this company. And that's just a special way that we, I guess, approach working with partners.
Yeah, you can't put the genie back in the bottle if you get in bed with somebody that compromises kind of what your organizational values, what your personal values are. I think all of us are fortunate that we're able to be selective in that sense. But to Steve's point, there's some groups, and I understand why they take the money, but you have to look at the reputational damage it's going to cause. It's the same thing as this group here probably wouldn't sign players that have baggage that would be against kind of our values as an organization. And some teams would take those risks because they want to win an extra game or two. And I at T1, I'm not fortunate enough to have that kind of leeway to make those types of risky moves. I have to kind of really be above board, being owned by two publicly traded companies, right? It's not as simple as just what I'm doing at T1. It's what their shareholders are going to see if something breaks and it's bad publicity and headlines. So, but when it comes to partners, you want to have partners that aren't there just to monetize for that 13 to 35-year-old demographic that really want to build something, that really want to be in gaming. And I mean, I'm sure all of you have been in pitches where someone calls it e-gaming or e-capital S sports. It's like where this is going, right? Like this call is probably not, you're not in it for the right rate, or the deck that they paid the consultant for isn't going to align with where you are. So you spend a lot of time educating the market, especially as you bring in more non-endemic partners. And we've been fortunate to have Nike come through for us and BMW, and Carlos and I share that partner there. And it's been really great working with them because they had a holistic approach to doing it globally and why they were getting it for the right reasons versus just slapping a couple stickers on some jerseys, doing a cool hype video, and that's kind of it. So it's just finding the right partners to kind of build long-term with versus the quick hit of cash.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everyone saying. I mean, I'll use FlyQuest as an example, and not just in the ways that we've done well. Like, let's be real, FlyQuest when I first joined was super cringe, and the brand was just bad. Because we were like memed all the time. We were like Team X. I don't want to say sponsor, but that's what they called us because we had no brand equity. We didn't have brand identity, and we ended up just being the sponsor team. Like, might as well just give us a title sponsor for the partners that we had, because we had so many deliverables and it wasn't done in a good way because the FlyQuest wasn't thought about first. There was no vision. And if you don't have a company vision, if you don't have brand identity, then everything's going to be all over the place, whatever that you do, whether it's content, social posts, how things look like on your design side, and also the partners you sign. There's no direction, there's no purpose, right? Just anything comes and you grab it. And that's what FlyQuest did really poorly. And that's why we had to rebrand. And now, because we have our vision of showcase greatness, we know what we stand for, we're the eco-friendly team. It makes things simpler but not easier when we're doing partnerships. By that I mean, if we get a really fat check and they want to cut down all the trees and burn the environment, it makes it simple because we know that we're not going to do that, but it doesn't make it easier because, man, that's a big revenue driver for us. But it all is for scalability. It helps our investment, it helps us grow, and it builds our valuation, because at the end of the day, we've already established what FlyQuest is. And so your partners should absolutely be aligned with that. And I think everybody on this call has done that well. So with MasterCard, it's not like they're just a logo slap. They're helping us plant trees. They doubled our trees. And we work with them on their Priceless Planet Coalition, so a division within MasterCard.
Right. Yeah, Carlos. At the beginning, your NFT project was already a bit mentioned, but that is something, a general topic that's very unpopular within the esports community at the moment. Just NFTs in general, crypto a bit less so. But you guys did that, and obviously there was backlash against that as well. So, how in that moment, obviously, the way it's played out is a bit unfortunate. But in that moment, how was it for you to navigate like with all that fan backlash, which I presume you might have suspected was coming, given the earlier backlash fans had expressed against other NFT projects?
Yeah, I'm glad we're doubling down on the G2 NFT project. It's very fair.
Everybody had their
We're all
say.
getting NFTs too.
Among
That's
the
what he said.
fucking dozens of other projects that are greatly.
We're talking about fan back. Okay, I mean,
okay,
you can name
listen, I
another
don't care.
project that had fan backlash.
You know me,
It's
bro.
fine.
You know me.
Yeah.
You know me. I don't care. Yeah. So that there's I mean, we're in a place in time in the world where there's a very binary way to look at things, either good or bad, and there is no nuance. And if the public opinion is that something is bad, you're in the bad group. If public opinion thinks something is good, you're in the good group. And that is extreme and binary. There's no 0.5, there's 1 or 0. And so I think with NFTs at the gaming scale, or with the community of gaming at large, is being seen as a bad, straight up, without looking at nuance. I will not get into the reasons why we did our NFT release. We're proud of it. It's significantly different than what existed, and we have invested and continue to invest far more than we generated from it, and we generated a lot. So yeah, we're committed to the word, and obviously money is not the reason why we did that, because otherwise we wouldn't be investing. We would just cash out upon selling the tokens on day one, which we sold out worth $620,000 in 1 hour, and we would cash out on that. We didn't. We actually lose money on that, but that's okay, because that's what we want to do, and it's an opportunity to learn the tech, make us Web3 ready at large in the company, and learn the different features we can continue to add utilizing the Web3 technology. So you see, I gave you the reason why we did it, and yes, we did expect some backlash, and you still pushed for it, because we still believe that in the long term it will be beneficial for us to learn the ropes today, and not when Web3 crypto at large will be widely accepted and mainstream, which will come. And so yeah, I don't know what your question is, but I hope I answered my question.
No, yeah, you're a very good job at interviewing yourself and explaining why you know. But the question was, navigating in an era where fan backlash can be harsh, and we have seen companies walk back decisions regarding sponsorships, which we've said already. Sponsorships are obviously very important, and in order to align them with the company, but there are sometimes missers. And you saying, okay, NFTs weren't a misser for us, it aligns with our identity, we just needed to explain it. So I guess in that sense you've explained that point very well. But I think esports as an industry, it's still relatively young, obviously, compared to other forms of entertainment, and therefore it might seem more susceptible to these trends and these hypes. Obviously it's very difficult to predict what the next hype or trend is going to be. Maybe it's going to be like this Neuralink thing where you get like some chip implanted in your brain.
The thing is that so you have to think about the following. Okay, we are at the forefront of digital technology in general. Anything that is new and digital first will be very likely tested and tried in esports, video game competition, video games, and online communities. So will be for now and in the future at the forefront of all these tryouts, and some of them will fail, some of them will succeed. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you whether NFTs are going to remain relevant or whether this crashes forever. But you have to make tries and take risks and learn things along the way, because if everybody else is doing what you intend to learn now, then you are really lost. So regardless, if you take no risks, is when you get no gain. That's guaranteed. And yeah, it's not so much about explaining, like you said, but about being at the forefront of whatever's next. And you gotta try and throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks along that process.
Yeah, you have to own it. I mean, we have floral jerseys, and when we announced our Go Green initiative and kicked that off in 2020, everyone, when I shared my plan, and even with our players, are like, "What are you doing, Tricia? Like, people are gonna meme us like crazy. Like, you're gonna have flowers all over it, and they're like, yo, let's own it. Because again, previously FlyQuest, we had a cringe-like brand, and we had to fix that. And it came because we didn't have ownership. You have to own everything you do, even if that makes risks, and just stay consistent with that. And that requires you to be bold and take risks and pass on opportunities that seem good, just to be consistent throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, you also mentioned, like building the clear Team Liquid identity. So kind of stating like the question I also asked Carlos. So why does esports seem susceptible to these new trends? Do you also agree with Carlos then that, hey, we're just in technology, so we're gonna try new technology? Or because from my perspective, maybe I'm a bit more like how do you say that, more bitter. Like for me, like I'm very inclined to say, from an outside perspective, okay, like if there might be money in it, people are gonna try it. So how do you view that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do agree with Carlos in that when there are new technologies or new areas of investment for teams to get involved in, doing so from an R&D perspective in order to learn the chops and figure it out as it evolves and becomes even its own emergent technology with other things impacting it over time is probably wise. Now, we probably precursor to that at TL have a bit of a, we call it the TL way, where we just like dig in, we're tenacious, and we're really thoughtful with what we do. We execute as if it was our own, and we do that when new things come up. So, for example, when the Overwatch League came out, we apply the TL way. We analyze it. What do the financials look like? What does the game look like? Is this going to be an esport? What is the why does Blizzard want to do this? What are they getting out of it? What is the economics of the deal? Like, all this stuff, and we basically come to the conclusion like, nah, we're not doing it. Same thing for the Call of Duty League. For NFTs and cryptocurrency, we have been doing research for a year on this stuff, and we have not acted in the marketplace yet or publicly, but we are in R&D like you would not believe. We have whole teams that are analyzing this and figuring out how are we going to do this the TL way, and that's really important. And the fundamentals associated with cryptocurrency and blockchain technology and digital goods, or digital goods that become NFTs once they're minted, and all of the applications and some of all the things that are happening in this space, there are fundamentals that work. Now, on top of it, there are also things that don't work, like pump and dump schemes and all these YouTubers like selling coins and all this crap that's happening. That's basically causing it's painting a broad brush that it means that everything else is shit. Well, that's actually just not true fundamentally. That there are components and fundamentals associated with all the things that I mentioned that actually make sense. Like the fact that I could possibly own a digital good, just like I own a PAX badge. Actually, I've got like 150 badges from all the different events that I've been to, and I have a collection of them all. But I use them because they're moments in my life that I'm proud of, that I'm like, I went to that event, I went to this event, and I have my ticket and I framed it. Like, why wouldn't you want to have a digital good that owns that moment in time when, Faker did X, or we won the international in 2018, to be able to share that moment with fans, to have a badge, to something that lives on forever, is pretty cool. Now, there's a whole other concept doesn't yet apply about buying and selling all that stuff, which you may or may not want to do. But anyway, I think the application of getting involved in emergent technologies for teams is a requirement for large organizations to figure out what they decide to do is to their own values, and how that mirrors their vision and mission at the company.
Yeah. Joe, you
Yeah,
said,
no,
you're owned by huge companies like Comcast, for example, is massive, so you can't just do anything. How is that for you to view these new trends and find a way to operate in them?
yeah, I think we're similar to kind of what Steve's doing, and we've been looking at it for a year. And like to Carlos' point, Web3 is coming. Like you need to kind of figure out how to like embrace it and use it. Like I'm excited about smart contracts. I think transparency in contracts, getting rid of these contracts that lock kids in forever or not, it just, I think more transparent there is helpful. I think Steve, you have obviously great systems. You should share with that with some of the other teams in North America. But I think you have to embrace it. You have to figure out what works. Not all things of Web3 are going to work for everybody, but there's certain applications, to Steve's point, like and for me, it's smart contracts, where that's something that I can embrace pretty easily, and even the parent companies can get behind, because they understand where that's going. They see 1,000 transactions a minute. And I would love for more transparency in gaming, not necessarily saying we should expose every player's salary, because then toxicity comes if you're paid too much, and then you're not performing well, and then if you're paid too little. So we have to figure out what the right solution is. But I think embracing emerging technologies as a young kind of sport, compared to the traditional stick and ball sports, is something that we're good at, that we're nimble at. Just in general, our users and consumers of our product are 2-screen users. They're able to adapt. They're banking online. They're not writing checks anymore. So they're more adaptable versus an older traditional sports fan who's probably in their mid 50s and is not interested in NFTs or crypto anyway. So I think we have to embrace emerging technology, because it's also a differentiator for us when we're talking to different partners about coming on, like why they should put money in one of our teams versus go to the Philadelphia Phillies, for example, and just put money on an outfield wall. So we have to really kind of figure out how to embrace it.
Yeah. Steve, you had a hard cutoff at this point in time, right? Is that right? So yeah,
I do too, my friend. I do too.
You do too, but you didn't say it, so you have to stay. I'm sorry, man. But
I really can't. I love you, brother, but I really have to.
Okay. Leave. No, Arts, what we're going to do then is just we're going to round up the panel as a whole. As much as I appreciate talking with Tricia and Joe, I love the 4 people bouncing back and forth a bit more. So that's going to be it for this panel. But stay tuned, because after this, there's going to be more panels. Specifically, we're going to have, I had to write it down. Hang on 1 second. We have a full day of content planned. One with TSM's VP of Esports, Dominic Callas. He's going to be on next, so stay tuned and enjoy the rest of the conference.